Welcome to the Fertility Mind podcast. I am your host, Jessica Friesen, a certified fertility mindset coach, a sound healer, and an international best-selling author. My mission for this podcast is to give you weekly episodes where you hear my own success with IVF and how mindset and manifestation changed it all for me. You will also hear from my guests who share their success stories in the fertility world. I want you to know that you are not alone. Even when things feel tough and when things feel like they aren't going your way, the tools and techniques you will get in this podcast, I know can change everything for you too. So thanks for being here with me today, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fertility Mind. I have two beautiful guests here today, Cortney and Suzanna Dreifelds. And I met Cortney a while ago. She studied the program TIR as well. And her and her wife, Cortney, have this beautiful, beautiful story. So I'm excited for our listeners to hear today. And ladies, please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, so I'm Suzanna Dreifelds, and this is my wife.
Yeah, I'm Cortney Dreifelds. So I work with women now to help them feel great about their bodies, no matter what the conditions or challenges.
Yeah, and we have a company together called Peak Performance Coaching, where we really help people connect with themselves and connect with others. That's our background.
Amazing. So, Cortney, will you share with us the process for you? How did you, because you chose to carry, did you guys have a conversation, or did you know right away that you wanted to carry, or how did that conversation started when you guys just, decided that you wanted to have a family?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that question has come up so much for us. And as Susanna's chuckling, I went to Susanna and I said, I really, really want to carry. And she said, okay. So I recognize that it doesn't work that way for a lot of couples. And I really felt very privileged to be able to have that opportunity. So it was one of the easiest conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we both came out in our mid 20s, I'd say. And I mean, right from the start, I knew that if we wanted to have children, it wasn't going to be by the typical means, because we didn't have the right physical parts.
Yeah.
So it was, I had never, it was never my dream to have a baby and carry a baby. But that being said, once we got married and started talking about children, it was definitely something that I wanted and was 100% on board with.
Amazing. So now you're in the fertility world, obviously, because you need a sperm donor. How did you guys decide on a sperm donor, or how did you even start the process in a fertility clinic?
Yeah, so we started looking at different sperm banks, and what we did is just talk to a lot of friends that have already been through the process, so that we didn't have to keep spinning our wheels to do research upon research upon research. This is where I get kind of paralyzed by taking action, as I get so obsessed with having to have the perfect answer instead of the one that's right for us. So when we first started talking about it, it was really about what was important for us. And so I asked Susanna about her background, if we would like a sperm donor who was Greek or Latvian or both. And it didn't really make a difference for us, culturally or genetically. But one thing that really distinguishes what's special about the two of us is our personalities. And so we ended up choosing a sperm donor who was, titled Mr. Congeniality, because that's exactly who Susanna is. She's so creative. She's so full of life. She just is amazing with people. And I was like, this is really what we want to create.
And we knew that environment and genetics would play a part in it. So we weren't like, oh, this guy has the same personality type, so we're going to assume that our baby will have the same personality type. But we just thought that's kind of a neat place to start from. So we we ended up going with an American, so we're Canadians, and we went with an American sperm bank. Just because, as Courtney was saying, like our friends had done a ton of research on it, and we kind of witnessed their experience, and yeah, we had a lot of choice in the matter as far as age. I guess with the donors, physical age, comprehensive medical history, background. But as far as pictures go, because I know some people, like, there are different options. Some people get pictures, some don't get pictures. We just had one picture of our donor when he was around the age of 3 or 4, would you say? Yeah. So we basically just had one picture to go on and an audio file of him being interviewed by, I guess, the nurses or the people at the clinic. And his answers were really thoughtful. And he basically had said that he believed that anybody who wanted to have children deserved the opportunity to be able to go for it. And we just fell in love with that response because and that was essentially us. Like, we really, really wanted a kid, but didn't have the ability to do it on our own. And so we kind of fell in love with him without ever knowing him, and just being really grateful. And that was our attitude going into it.
And as a caveat with the selection process is sometimes it's not as easy and straightforward, and sometimes there's hiccups and challenges. And one of the challenges that we had was we had found out from the one clinic that I had to choose somebody who was Rh negative. And then when we went to another clinic, we found out that it was actually need to be Rh positive. So there was just a confusion between one place to the other of whether it's Rh negative or positive. And so I was really frustrated about that, because I felt like there was an injustice. There was somebody who had made a mistake and they had to be held to account. And the more I started to think about this, the more it frustrated me and it angered me. And I realized that stress and that making somebody wrong actually took away from my purpose and my vision for my future. And it deterred me from really focusing on what mattered to me. So what I invite you to look at is whatever challenges that you're seeing or whatever frustrations you see along the way, is really focus on whether it fulfills you and energizes you, or whether it adds more stress and anxiety to your journey.
I think that's incredible. And yeah, that's beautiful, because I think anyone in the fertility world, I truly don't believe anything is ever perfect. I think there can be a lot of beautiful synchronicities. And I actually got goosebumps when you started, just saying about his message. I was like, oh, that is so beautiful. But yeah, I think that's so, so awesome. So how did you, I know you said that you mentioned, like, you talked to friends that did a lot of work or research for sperm clinics. So because you went with an American one, did you have to do procedures outside of Canada, or could you actually do them here? Like, how does that work with sperm donation?
Yeah, there were a couple of different procedures, and when I heard about it, it seemed really overwhelming and very frustrating I have to do this and I have to do this. I'm not exactly sure what, exactly what the steps were, but I knew looking at it to begin with, it was overwhelming for me. But really, I had written down what needed to be done, like step 1, step 2, step 3. And what I always came back to is, what do I want and why do I want it? What I really desperately wanted was to have a baby, more than anything else. And why I wanted it is because I wholeheartedly feel like I was made to be a mom, like to love and nurture, and to, really like build the character and co-create this incredible little being coming into the world. So, really like bringing yourself back to that purpose and what really inspires you and pulls you towards it.
Perfect. So now that you've chosen your donor and the process is starting. Did you guys have to go through IUIs? Did you have to do like an egg retrieval and things like that? Or what was your process in the fertility part?
Yeah, so the first process that we decided on was IUI. And we had taken this course called Dykes Parenting Tykes. And we were actually at odds with how we would like to go about our sperm donor. I was more interested in having a known sperm donor and Susanna, an unknown sperm donor. And so yeah, but I feel like it was just really focusing on like what we wanted instead of getting caught up with the details and the process around it. So we did IUI.
Yeah. After several awkward conversations with people that we knew. Just two, really.
Well, not even, more like one.
One and a half. One conversation we chickened out on having, and the other one was like a very open but slightly. I mean, it's hard to ask somebody that, in my opinion, it was harder to ask somebody that we knew to donate.
Mm-hmm.
And legally back then, I mean, we're going back like 6 years now, so I don't know if it's changed, but back then, like what we discovered through this Dykes Parenting Tykes course was just the legalities were very different between a known donor and an unknown donor. And I just never wanted to be in the position where, somebody could see their, biological offspring, for lack of better words, and say, no, this is it. And that being said, we know other couples that went with a known donor, and that person is very much a part of the lives as like a uncle type figure, and it's worked out really great. So it is definitely unique to the couple, and go with whatever feels right, 100%. So
And I think that's beautiful because I think every family dynamic is so very different. And I think so. Thank you for being so open and sharing that, like Susanna, you didn't want to have a known one. And Courtney, you said, like, I'm okay with having a known, because every conversation between, you and your partner is so important through the process and being on board together and knowing what works and what doesn't work for you. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that part. And so, Courtney, tell us a little bit about your side. Like watching Courtney go through, like, did you guys get pregnant on the first try with IUI? That I should say is the first question.
Yeah, so I read a lot. I love research. And so going into it, I was quite nervous. And we both are athletes. And so Susanna almost like coached me like an athlete. She would say, you can do this. You just believe in it. And she, while we were actually in IUI for the first time, she had put on like fertility visualization for me while we were waiting for the doctor. So instead of feeling like we're waiting and I'm getting more and more anxious, she would help to calm me down. She said, like, listen, just breathe through it. And I'm just going to put on an audio for you. And it made a massive difference of just having her support and her understanding. And even, there was a week leading up to it that I had to go in 6 a.m., 6:30 for, internal ultrasound and blood work. And I had so many needles in my arms that I had to wear long sleeve shirts at work because I was so worried about somebody seeing all these needles and Band-Aids. And even like sometimes they would bleed through in the day. So it had to be like black long sleeve shirts, which I just felt like I was really hiding something, And so the whole process leading up to it was emotionally very, very stressful. And of course, I didn't want to drag Susanna downtown Toronto every day at 6:30 in the morning. Like she came with me the first time, and then she came with me for the IUI. But it was really an independent process that I was, prepared to take on. I called her before and I called her after to get that emotional support. But it is stressful. It is emotional. So I found whatever tools that you and your significant other can use to support each other at the time is really, really significant. Is really important.
Yes. So Courtney, I want to hear your side as well. Or Susanna, I just said Courtney. I want to hear your side as well because I think I think it's so important for people to understand that it's still two people going through it, no matter, your sexes or your relationship. It's still two people going through the process. So I'd love for you to share whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I think just as the non-carrying partner, I felt a bit helpless and like in a lot of it, just as far as like, she was the one that was going through all of the testing. She was the one that had to, really like carry the emotional and like physical weight of all of it. And so I had to keep thinking about, instead of like removing myself from the situation and saying like, well, there's nothing really I can do, to really focusing on like what can I do? Like in what ways can I show up and be supportive? And it's so funny, as lesbians, we had so many people that were like, why don't you each get pregnant at the same time? Like this was like one of those things, and it was just like, that would be horrible.
Yeah.
It would be horrible because there's nobody there to support the other one. And you asked, how did you decide who was going to carry? I kept making the joke that I would be the backup uterus. So in the event that it didn't work, then maybe I could be the backup uterus. But I kind of just had my position myself as like, I'm the support. So whatever I can do as the support, just show up. And if that's like, help her, guide her through a visualization, or, listen to her when she's like really stressed and frustrated, or is feeling down about it, or isn't feeling hopeful, like be that like beacon, like whatever I could do to set aside, whatever I was going through, knowing that like whatever I was experiencing was like a million times more amplified for her because she was physically going through it. So I think just kind of recognizing my role, like she was the person that was physically experiencing what was happening. And I was kind of at a different level where I was experiencing what she was experiencing, but I'm not physically experiencing it. So it was very important to separate the two, because it gave me the perspective of, it's not actually happening to me. I'm definitely part of it. And there's more that I can do. There's always something that I can do to support. So I suggest like really separating that for people out there that are the partners of the people going through it, is like, sometimes it might feel like it's happening to you as well, because we're, emotionally connected, and it's not. And so it's good to know that. And because it kind of gives you like, I don't know, for me, it just helped me pull from a different place of how I could support.
I would love to piggyback on that and just echo a little bit more about, exactly what that was, so that it helps other listeners. Is that I really understood the power of recreation, because I didn't want Susanna to tell me, don't worry about it, or it's okay, or it's going to get better, it's going to get worse. Like, I didn't want her to tell me anything. I wanted her to fully understand how I was feeling. And so recreation is her just really truly listening in a space where she's not distracted. She's not like trying to find solutions or puzzle piecing. And she's just like, wow, I can hear that this is really stressful for you. I can hear that like it's, you're really working hard to make this work. I can see that you're like really committed to having a baby, and just having like to understand me, was really, really powerful. And I found like we got to understand each other as people through this process, because we were willing to like put our own personal like, challenges and frustrations aside to, really listen to each other newly.
I think that's beautiful. I think you can really see the power of your relationship and how the two of you are really working together. So Susanna, a question for you, because you were really trying to support Cortney. Did you ever have moments of like self-doubt yourself? Like how did you regulate yourself when, you're giving a lot of your energy to listen to Cortney and making sure that you're supporting her? How did you support yourself? Or did you and Cortney really work like together to, like if one was up and one was down to really make it flow? Like how did that work for you guys?
Yeah, just exactly what you said. I feel like one of our superpowers as a couple is that we really recognize that when one person's down, then that's the other person is gonna to bring the other one up, and we do that in the event that we're both down at the same time. Then it's kind of looking at, okay, what can we both muster within each other, or like who's down like a little bit lower, and like what can we do to raise each other up. I I guess it's hard to say now because it has been, our son is 5 years old now. So I think my biggest lows were just feeling like just kind of combating that feeling that it was completely out of my control and that there wasn't a lot that I could do about it. So it was kind of this like, on one side you can be like, well, there's nothing you can do, and you can just kind of release all like, I guess, responsibility around it. Um, I found that like the all of my concerns are mostly like, how am I going to be as a parent? What's the outside world going to think of lesbians having a baby? And just like the idea of like overcoming like, oh my gosh, like now we're going from this time in our lives that has been pretty like carefree and fun as like adults without children into like, holy smokes, we're going to be parents now. I found that stuff was harder to manage.
I remember
Yeah.
Susanna went to the gym a lot more too, and she has always been good at reaching out for support, like with friends, family. And I think that's so important is that even though she was, let's say, like level two of the situation where I was physically experiencing it and she was supporting me, is that she's got her own stuff that is just as significant and just as important to work through. And let's say if I was dealing with something, then like especially through the first miscarriage, that you really regularly reached out to your mom and your friends and let them know how you were feeling, so that they could be like that third level of support for you. And in turn, if you were physically and emotionally taken care of, then you could be better apt to physically and emotionally take care of me.
Yeah.
And emotionally taken care of, then you could be better apt to physically and emotionally take care of me.
Yeah.
I feel like those rings of support were really important to us.
Thank you. So, what advice would you give anyone that is in the gay community or anyone in general that doesn't necessarily have a support system around them? What kind of advice would you give?
Yeah. I would say, for like find the resources that work for you. We've done different like habits challenges and things like that, and everybody takes to a different technique or tool that has them feel like they can really like release that anxiety and frustration and things that aren't working the way that they want them to, and things that kind of snap them back into what their vision is, what their focus is, their purpose, their passion. And I think that, regardless of the physical people that are around you that know and experience your journey, there are so many things that we can do to be in control of our circumstance and our situation, whether it's like a cold shower or like an exercise warm up or like journaling, music, and for me, I always gravitate towards, a guided meditation or visualization practices. It has me feel like somebody is understanding and getting my experience. So those are really effective for refocusing on what you want. I think so often we can get caught up with social media, news, and the media, and then we start to think that what's happening outside of ourselves, like what's happening externally, is our experiences, our feelings, is our thoughts, our emotions. But sometimes we forget that, like, okay, I'm in the driver's seat. I am in control of how I think about my body, of how I feel about my body. And ain't nobody going to tell me like how to feel about my body. And like really taking that control back by finding the resources that work for you.
That's awesome. I love how you brought the mindset piece into it because I think there can be dwindling hope if you don't get pregnant the first time or the second time. And you had mentioned that you had a miscarriage. So was it really those mindset tools, like when you were just saying like the guided like visualizations and really saying like, I know I want to be a mom. Is that what helped you get through the tougher times? Like, are you okay talking about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I think the most important thing is whether it's uncomfortable or painful, is like releasing that story so that we are in control. It's like nothing was done to you, or it's like an experience. And the more that we can get through that pain of a miscarriage and that hurt and that loss, is the more that we can come through it stronger and more resilient in any area in our life, in our marriage, in our parenting, and in our career. With my first experience of having a miscarriage, I was actually working with a client, and I noticed I never obviously pick up the phone, but it was my doctor calling. And I knew I picked up the phone while I was working with a client, and I just said yes, yes, and actually found out on the phone while working with a client that I'd like that we had had a miscarriage. And so that was a really challenging situation of like dealing with my emotions in a professional environment. And then the next day when I went to work, there was a colleague of mine who had said, some comment about like, how you feeling? I said, I'm not feeling so great today. And she had said, yeah, you're sick a lot. And it's like
Awful.
somebody had just like punched me in the stomach. I literally felt like throwing up on the spot. And the reason I'm saying this is because, I mean, we're never fully present to what somebody else is dealing with. And somebody else can be experiencing anything and you have no idea. So just always being kind of like respectful and open to what somebody might be dealing with when they're sick or just tired or aloof, or not like stepping into the type of character that you know them to be. And the second thing is that I wanted to say by that experience is that it's important to always come back to like what my vision is, or what my sense of self is so often I could have allowed that comment to really take me out, to not keep trying to, or to shove it down, to not have it mean anything. And, what was really important is to express the impact of that statement to my wife, get the support that I needed, and not as a make wrong to the other person, because that's her experience and something that she'll have to go through and learn through experience. But just more so to get the comfort and the support that I needed, and to feel the pain, to feel the hurt, and so that I could move forward.
I have to say that I was really like the way Courtney handled the situation. I was really proud of her. I found that she was really like, with people she trusted, was like shared very openly about what she was going through and that she had experienced a miscarriage. And I found that the more that she shared it, or even, me sharing from like, this is what happened to us as a couple, like there were just so many women and friends that came forward. Like I remember, like, I think my mom had shared a story. I didn't know that she had a miscarriage, and like friends that, from like unwanted pregnancies to like all sorts of stories. Like, this is one of these things, as women we're taught not to talk about it, but as soon as like, and it was mostly Courtney who led the way, because I thought if she's comfortable sharing this, then I can share it. And I found the more that she shared it, like the response back was incredible. Like I had no idea that there are so many women that were dealing with similar, like either had a miscarriage in the past or have, had one fairly recently, and just that it's like that whole vulnerability piece, right? We're afraid to share it because we think that we're going to be weak in our emotions, but how it lands with somebody else is as courageous, and it creates all of this space for them to then say like, hey, I'm going through the same thing. And that was liberating. And, Cortney at one point, I guess it was a little bit afterwards, and I hope you're okay with me sharing this, but like, I was completely surprised and taken aback that Courtney actually thought it was her fault. And I remember having this conversation, and she was just like bawling her eyes out and feeling like it was something that she did. And or she did or she didn't do, and like went through these scenarios of what, of everything, like this like hyper analysis of like everything that she could have done differently. And and I, as the non-caring partner, was just like, that had never once crossed my mind. Like I had never thought for a second like Courtney did something wrong or anything to cause this. Like I really looked at it kind of from the medical view of like, it just wasn't the right environment for that, for that little, I guess not so medical, but for that baby to flourish, for lack of better words. But never once had I thought, oh, like Courtney's fault, you did something wrong here. And I, and the more she shared it, the more I heard other stories of women who did feel responsible for it. And that was hard to hear, because it was just like, how could you, like, I feel like that's, yes, there are things that obviously you don't want to be playing impact sports or whatever, but, like it's really like it's not anybody's fault. So yeah, just realizing like that could be, the mindset of your partner at any given time, is that they're holding all of the responsibility, and that if something doesn't go, they might start to think like that it's something that they did or they didn't do, and just to recognize that and kind of hold space that like, and lift them up and tell them like, you didn't do anything wrong here. This is all biological here.
And this is what Brene Brown talks about, is the difference between guilt and shame. Is guilt is something happened, and it was like something happened. Whereas, shame is, I am wrong. I am the mistake. I am bad. And I think that it's a very powerful exercise of moving from like the shame to guilt, and to be able to decompartmentalize, like, what is it and how much am I taking fault for? And fault never helps anybody. That shame, that deep loathing from within of like, my body cannot, or I cannot, has us stuck. That we literally can't move anywhere, and nor can anybody else around us. Yeah. And really recognizing like that it was the event, it was this experience that didn't work out the way that we wanted to, and differentiating from like the I am bad to this experience didn't work out.
I think that's a very beautiful message. And I can contest to like the first little part of the conversation where in October there's a wave of light where you light a candle at 7 p.m. and it's for all like pregnancy, loss, miscarriage, all different things like that. And I started sharing that on social media a couple of years ago, and so many women actually like private messaged me and said like, I had no idea about wave of light, and they said, I had 4 miscarriages, or whatever their story was. And, I just replied back saying, I am sending you so much love and light, and thank you for sharing with me. Because in the fertility world, you really can feel alone, and you really can feel like it is your fault. I know many times myself, I cried to my husband and I said, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why isn't this working for me? And then, just I went through so many emotions, and I felt guilty. And I think talking about your mindset and letting that go and just saying, like, this isn't my fault, that, even in the perfect uterus, perfect sperm, perfect egg, perfect, environment, it doesn't mean you're going to get pregnant. And I think, I don't know every fertility clinic, I don't know, but I can contest, they didn't really talk to me about percentages other than, it might, if you implanted two embryos or if you did this, there's a 25% chance, or it could bump it up to 50% chance, but that's the highest you're ever going to get. And when I went through that, I didn't really understand those numbers. And I think it's so important for people to know, like, you could have the perfect environment and it still doesn't necessarily, through IUI or IVF, it doesn't take the first time. And I think people need to understand that too. Go in with the mindset that it can and you hope it does, but it doesn't mean it's going to work, and it really has nothing to do with you. So thank you for sharing that part, that it really doesn't. But I do think as the women that are carrying, we do take that on ourselves. Like, did I do something wrong? Did I eat something I shouldn't have? Did I exercise too much? Did I, and you can go down that path really easy. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so important people hear it's not you. And I know women really take that on themselves. Like, it's just, and what the first time I found out that I wasn't pregnant, I was in my office and, I just sent a text message to my boss. I was like, I'm closing the door for a couple minutes. I sold insurance at that point. So talking to people that usually aren't so happy to call you, I was like, I need to like compose myself until I can get home and like release this energy. But yeah, like that can be a really tough thing. And people do say some very interesting things to you that you're like, if you only knew, if you only knew what just happened, maybe you wouldn't say those things. But yeah, I think that message that you shared was really beautiful, about saying, like, you don't hold judgment or blame on them or making them wrong, because I think a lot of people tend to do that, and just be like, because you're going through enough as it is with, hormones and what your body's experiencing. So is there anything else that you guys would like to share, about any part of it?
Yeah, Jessica, I really want to echo what you just said about having your composure and then releasing. And I think that there's something to be said of, we present ourselves in a certain professional environment or a certain environment where it is not a safe place for us to expose and express what we're actually dealing with. And just to recognize, like, you don't have to shove it down. You don't have to suppress. Like, find yourself that safe environment. And sometimes it might not be with your partner because of what they're dealing with. Sometimes it might be with your mom. Sometimes it might be with your best friend or somebody who you've just met, but like, really to be able to differentiate between, like, what is the most safe environment for me to express, like, what my fundamental needs are. And
Mhm.
like, the other thing that I just want to, touch on is that so often through this process is, we had moments of being stressed or frustrated or panicked. And, what we've really started to study lately is identifying if your fundamental basic human needs are met. And when we're going through this process, there's so much emphasis and stress on the outside and things that are really literally beyond our control. And we forget to play, we forget to laugh, to connect, certainly to connect with each other in a relationship in an intimate, romantic way, because of all the like crazy, uncomfortable, weird electronics that are going in your vagina. But like, you forget to connect intimately. And, like, really having this needs evaluation of what you need and being brave and courageous enough to express that to, your mom or your best friend or your significant other, and having your needs met. Because the thing is like, if we're not living our best life in real time, is no matter what happens in the future, is we've been conditioned that our needs don't matter. And so whether you become a mom or not is, we have fulfillment if our needs are met. And it always starts with you no matter what.
And I think that goes for both sides. Like there was, if I can divert for a second, like there was a period in Courtney's pregnancy where I was away a lot. I was taking this team management program, and every I guess 2 months I'd be gone for 4 days or 5 days, and I was I was working full time, I was studying full time, I was away a lot, and I feel like there was a lot of like me pushing aside kind of things that I needed, which ended up resulting in me being a bit checked out. And if if I'm checked out, I'm not even showing up for myself, and I wasn't showing up fully for Cortney. And while we were like an awesome team, after the kid was born, there was like some tension there, for lack of better words, because like there was a big stretch of Courtney's pregnancy where she did feel alone. And that's such a hard thing to admit as the partner, because like you want to say like, and we, like I think overall we were pretty good, but like I wasn't always there. And that's why I go back to like, what can I do in this situation? Because for a long time I was like, well, there's nothing that I can do. I'm not actually carrying. I'm not, bearing the physical, emotion. Well, like I knew I partnered the emotional side, but the physical side I wasn't really doing. And Courtney is such a strong woman independently that there are a lot of times where I was like, well, she doesn't actually need me. And so then I started feeding myself a story that I wasn't actually needed, that it didn't matter so much because she was the one that was kind of doing all of it anyways. And I allowed myself to get very easily distracted. So, that part that Courtney said about needs, like it's just, I think it's just as important as the partner to recognize like, hey, are you still here? Like, even though they're physically carrying it, are you still doing what you can? And just really evaluating. I think the whole thing is like kind of checks and balances. Like, am I fully showing up? Am I being the best version of me so that I can give that to my partner? Because if you're not being the best version of you, you can't give that to anybody. So it took, it wasn't all rosy, and we weren't the perfect team. And there are times I could have definitely shown up as more of a partner, and I could have met more of my needs, and I could have met more of Courtney's needs. So if somebody's listening and the relationship is going through some rocky parts during that pregnancy, during this process, I think that's very natural as well. But I think that Courtney and I we've always been able to find our way back to each other. So I think if you have that dynamic in your relationship where it is going through that hard part, have faith that you can come back to each other, and that it's about owning your part in it and being able to say like, you know what, you're right, I have been really distracted. I can see that that's had an impact on you. And what we're really committed to right now is bringing this kid into the world and in an environment where everybody in our family feels, loved and supported, and like they're getting their needs met, and that they're able to express themselves in a way that lands and feels good, and that we can all be there for one another. So I just wanted to add that in because it wasn't all rosy, and there were definitely times where where it was hard. So
I love your transparency. I think it is important because people, you get categorized sometimes like, oh, you're lucky. You're one of the lucky ones. I'm sure it was all rosy and hunky dory for you. And you know what the truth is any type of marriage, there's ups and downs, whether, you're going through, a pregnancy or just basic marriage as it is. And I think I love that you guys were honest about it, because I can truly say, in my relationship with my husband, as soon as my twins were born, because we had three older girls in our house, he checked out a little bit. He was like, okay, the babies are here. And the crazy part is my twins were born 2 months early. So I was in the hospital. I literally I would come home to sleep. But he was like, I got to focus on the girls. I got to focus on the girls. And mentally I was there with him. I'm like, yeah, we don't want them to feel stressed out. We didn't want them to worry. But I was like, where are you? Our babies are in the hospital. But he, it took him almost 9 months for him to be like, I really kind of checked out on you. I'm like, yep, you did. But, and then he kind of went through a bit of emotion, like an emotional like roller coaster, because he's like, I can't believe I did that to you. I was like, you didn't do it to me. And I said, you were focused on the girls. You didn't want their life to change. A lot of things kind of happened, that we weren't planning on, that we didn't expect. We got through it. We're fine. But yeah, it was not all hunky and dory either. But you're right. Like, if you have the dynamic saying, like, we're willing to get through whatever, it doesn't have to be smooth sailing. You're going to find some pretty big waves sometimes, but I think that's beautiful that you guys have that connection in that relationship. And you guys also talked about like keeping the relationship alive. Because I know a lot of people going through the fertility world, it's just you're so focused on having your baby or getting pregnant that a lot of the emotional aspects of what you both need together as a couple and what you both need individually sometimes gets lost because you're so like laser focused. We're spending this much money, we got to get here, I just want to get here, and once we're here. And so I also really liked how you touched on that, Courtney, because a lot of people are like, well, I can be happy once I have a baby, or once we're pregnant, we just need to get here. But you're not really connecting with your emotions of how you are right now in that spot. So thank you for mentioning that as well. So can I ask, did you just have one miscarriage? Was it, would you share a little bit about that part, just so people understand, like, the journey? Some people do get pregnant their first IUI. Some people, it's their seventh. Some people experience one or two miscarriages in between. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah. So my experience, I had a miscarriage, and it was after we had opened up and told our closest friends and our entire family. So what was important to me is just to be able to have my feelings and go through it at my own pace. And so I had requested that Suzanna just reach out to, our friends and family at her timeline and be able to tell them and just let them know that I'm not interested in talking to them at that time about it. Any wishes or comments, like they could definitely pass it through Suzanna, and Suzanna would tell me when I was ready. But like, it was just really important for me that I had my space and privacy to be able to deal with it on my own terms, without anybody telling me it's okay or it's going to be okay, or, about their experiences, because to be honest, I didn't really care about anybody else's experiences. Like, what I was feeling was enough. Like, I didn't want to hear about everybody else's. And so then we were successful the second time, and I recognized that this is an anomaly, that, it's a very difficult and complicated process. And so that was a very lucky thing to be successful the second time. And that's not the usual. Having said that, is that throughout my process is I really like the day by day book to understand where the fetus was at, to be able to focus on, like, every day was a new day. And I still had those pangs. I still had that anxiety. I had that anxiety up until I said it's going to be the 3 months that I'm going to have that anxiety. It lessened a tiny bit, but I still had it. And I said, okay, it's going to be up until the 6 months. And then I still had it. And the anxiety actually was more prominent before I gave birth. Like, you're always going to have different episodes of angst and anxiety and uncertainty. And the most important thing that we can do for ourselves is to be able to provide ourselves with some certainty. I found a lot of certainty in reading. Other certainty is like visualizing what you want, like really creating it, and just taking it day by day.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I just chuckled when Courtney talked about creating certainty, because I feel like she read every parenting childbirth book under the sun, and I downloaded an app called Baby Languages, and that's what we ended up using after the baby was born. So that's just a sidebar there, but absolutely, I think creating certainty in every way that you can helps you kind of create that path where you're not just focusing on like, this is all a big gamble. We never really know. Well, what do I do? Like, what do I know today? And what can I create moving forward is a great way to kind of, keep you from going on that swirl of like, what if, what if, what if, what if. And I feel like, that's something that you're going to embark upon your entire parenting journey. Like all of these worries do not go away once the kid is born. Like that's, it just continues. Like, how am I going to keep this little miracle alive? And what if this happens and all of it? So I think that there's a level of just like recognizing that this is what you sign up for when you take on your parenting journey, that there is always going to be an element of uncertainty, and you can allow that to like completely kind of paralyze you in action, or you can kind of lean into it and just really tell yourself, I'm going to give this like everything I've got, and I'm just going to have all the hope that I can muster. I'm going to give myself lots of grace when things don't go the way that I want them to. And if it's something that you really, really want, then you just keep, it's like, just keep digging for it. Like the more that you're willing to give that to yourself, like to just keep that faith alive is, I think that's like a life's journey, not just in fertility, but just a way to move through the world.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message. It really is. Yeah. So is there anything else that you guys would like to share, or that you guys would like to talk about? Any messages that you want to give to the listeners?
I will say that I meant to say it at the beginning of the conversation, just for those of you who are listening, about same-sex couples, like, I find that, when people see, two women with a kid, there can be a lot of questions. And Cortney and I are very, very, obviously we're on this show, so we're very, very open about our fertility, our process, and how things have come about. But I think it's just really important that not everybody is that open, and to be, to ask yourself, like, could Google answer this question for me? Or be respectful in asking, like, if you are curious. And I don't think that this is just for LGBT couples, but for anybody that, like, are you open to sharing your fertility story? And if somebody says no, then you politely accept that. So I obviously we're here because we're open and we're happy to talk about it. But I think to just have like an air of I don't know, respect, and that there are people out there that like to have this completely private. Can I share? I don't know if I should share this or not. I don't know if we're going to edit this or whatever, but like, there have been people that are like, well, how did you do it? Is usually the first question. And it's basically equivalent to somebody asking what sexual position they were in when they conceived, right? Like it's kind of a bizarre thing to ask. So there have been a couple of times where Courtney's like thrown that question back at people that she didn't want to share it. And they're kind of like, like, like maybe this is more private than it should be. Anyway, that might be an overshare, but I think just really being respectful of people's journeys, and that some people are open and happy and willing to share, and others may not be.
Yeah.
You should end it on something good.
Yeah. Well, I did want to end it and say that, I have, it's through these challenges and through these like heartbreaking moments that, being, naked and cold on the bathroom floor, crying by myself, and that I've really, found that inner strength to lift me back up again. And I have really like dedicated my life to having women feel heard and understood and empowered within our bodies. Like, we are not our body. We are the voice within our body. We're the soul, we're the spirit. And as long as we keep having our light shine, then we can keep creating light within others. And whether that's your future baby or like whether that's the impact that you were creating, is you can only create that impact when you have that light and that strength and that empowerment within like the voice that you're stepping into. So I think for anybody out there that's struggling with how they feel about their body, how they feel about their voice, like what they're, creating and stepping into, if anybody wants to have a conversation, I love this work. I love what I get to do. And likewise, I've known Suzanna for 15 years and have seen in personal relationships and professional relationships how she can really tap in and understand people and relationship dynamics. And it's only through like really, really face down, like embarrassing, shameful moments that are in our relationship where we have made the biggest mistakes, where we, have done everything wrong, that we've learned from it, grown from it, and become stronger together. And, if you're having those moments in your relationship, like, we're here to support you. And it doesn't need to be like, a sales call where we're going to like sell you on something. Like, we literally just create like magic for people and have them empowered and moving forward in their own lives. And so we just want to offer you guys just a complimentary call. Jump on a call. We'll have a conversation with you and just have you feel like really good about yourself and good about your vision and moving forward.
Thank you. I love how you both, just ended on your terms. I think it's perfect. I know there is so many people that want to stay anonymous, but they can listen to this podcast in this episode in the comfort of their own home and hear that it's okay too to be private. You don't have to be, like telling everyone your story, because some people want to hear it, some people don't. Some people want to share their stories so openly to give hope, and some people are like they just want to experience what they're experiencing. So no matter what they're going through, it's okay. And Cortney, I love how you ended it on hope and, really bringing it to empowering women, and how you guys work together as a team in your own marriage and how you also help people as well. I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And thank you for offering our listeners a complimentary call, because I think the world needs light, and anyone that has light to give, God bless them. Because I think just so many people are in a place where they just need something extra. And I think that's such a beautiful message. So I will get all of your social media links and things like that, and I'll put them in the podcast notes. So anyone that wants to reach out to you guys for, for a complimentary call or just to get to know you through social media,
absolutely,
then they can. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for both of you being here today. I love your story. I love the two of you. I think you're amazing. And
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. I love how the universe can really connect people and just put people in your path to share stories of hope, because I think, in the fertility world, honestly, there is, it's filled with a lot of dwindling hope where people focus on the negative, that this is happening to me, it's not happening for me. And they don't know how to flip the perspective, or they don't know how to find the positive within it. And it's a raw, sensitive topic for a lot of people, because no one asked to be in the fertility club. And even if you have to start out there because you're in a same-sex marriage, yes, it's a tough place to be. It's not, you don't just get to go, okay, I'm going to have a baby today. There's a lot of stuff like, whether it's deciding to surrogacy or egg donation or sperm donation or the whole kit and caboodle. There's so much work that has to be done beforehand. And I think it's just being the beacon of hope, sharing stories and letting people, share what they went through too. I think it's a message that people need to hear. So thank you so much for both of you being on here today and sharing your story. And again, listeners, look at the podcast notes for all of the links to Cortney and Suzanna if you want to reach out to them. So thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
If you found this helpful or know anyone that needs to hear this, please share. And don't forget to leave a review and subscribe. In love and gratitude, Jessica.